Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Business and economic development in Memphis tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian. Thanks for joining us. I am joined tonight by Ted Townsend, President and CEO of the Greater Memphis Chamber. Thanks for being here again.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, along with Bill Dries, reporter with the Daily Memphian. We are tonight taking a break from our one-on-one interviews with the top candidates for mayor. We've so far done Karen Camper, J.W. Gibson, Michelle McKissick, and Van Turner. All those are available at WKNO.org. And coming up in the next few weeks are Floyd Bonner, former Mayor Harrington, and Paul Young. Those also, if you miss them, they will be available on WKNO.org. All of that leading up to Election Day on October 5th, but early voting beginning September 15th, so not that far away. And also just staying on the topic of the mayoral race, which we'll talk to Ted about here. We did a debate with 5 of the candidates on August 15th, and you can get that at WKNO.org. Ted, we'll start with the mayor's race. I am going to assume that you're not going to endorse anyone today, so I won't bother asking you. But more seriously, you all just did a forum with leading candidates. I think it was the day after ours or a couple days after ours. Mm-hmm. What can a mayor do? You've been in economic development here. You've been in this role almost a year. You were at the state. You've done this for a long time. Right. What can a mayor really do to spur economic growth, new businesses, business retention?
Yeah, so I've had a great perspective to see an elected official responsible for economic development, whether that was Governor Haslam or his cabinet. And they play a pivotal role, ultimately. They have to understand the nuances, the complexities. These are highly complex financial transactions at the end of the day that represent a decade or more commitment, hopefully much more. So the mayor is really that closer for our community, the mayor of Memphis in particular. We want to make sure that someone has everything available to them to when they are in the C-suite or they're in our boardroom at the Greater Memphis Chamber, and we have that prospect who is representing the potential for 1,000 jobs and $1 billion in capital investment, for the mayor then to say why you should be here. I'm committed to your success, and these are the things we're going to do to ensure that. That's very powerful. And this is really, truly a historic moment for Memphis's economy. We've seen great growth. We've been monitoring our industry sectors, and obviously we recovered from the pandemic ahead of the national average, only 2 years, whereas the national average was 2.5 years. And that's largely because we've seen major industry sectors grow at double-digit percentage points with gross regional product. So a mayor has to understand the importance of growing that tax base.
What a lot of people will say as well, it's just the incentives. It's the city incentives, and that's really what the mayor does, or maybe even the appointments to the Edge Board and some of the economic development sort of groups that also put out incentives. Is it? You're saying it doesn't boil down to something that simple?
Not solely that. Incentives are a critical piece to it, but I can tell you that we set the value proposition based on Memphis being the prime location for them to operate their business. So the cost of doing business, obviously it's highly attractive here. Business Facilities magazine just recently ranked Memphis as the most affordable city in the U.S. Obviously we've been a logistics leader 3 years in a row as recognized by Business Facilities. We really layer in all of the attributes of down to EBITDA of why it makes sense to do business here. We talk about the workforce. We hope to set the story so that there's less dependency on incentives, even though they're a critical part of the equation.
Yeah, let me bring in Bill.
Is there a hesitancy, because sometimes I get the feeling that the folks who run corporations, they can sometimes view government and dealing with it as being a necessary evil to get what they want to do. And I've actually heard that phrase, necessary evil, used several times by several business leaders talking on background about it. So it is the importance of an elected official like the mayor, the idea that dealing with government is going to be a known quantity to some degree as they make their calculations.
Yeah, so we take a different approach to that, Bill. When we have prospects in, we structure what we call a one-stop shop. And we bring everyone to the table at one time so that that business doesn't have to knock on many doors when they're considering placing investment and creating jobs here. It is cited as a best practice by a lot of our peers, those at the state. They enjoy bringing a prospect in and knowing that they will have representation from City Hall, from Shelby County government, from our utility partners, and anyone else involved in the execution of getting that business to operate here. The prospects tell us that's a huge relief. So they don't see the government entities as an impediment. In fact, they're part of the team. And we're very grateful that administrations understand the importance of that. They lend their representatives, and sometimes it is the mayor. And we've had that recently where we're a finalist for a really incredible project. And the City of Memphis mayor came in and worked with us, and as well as MLGW, and we feel like we put a really compelling offer together.
So with the chamber has had a political action committee in the past, and it's made donations, and sometimes it's been donations to several candidates in a given race, like a council race. What's the plan for this election cycle in that regard?
Yeah, so we have not come out and endorsed a particular candidate in any race, and we will not do that. What we want to do is create forums so that candidates can express what their visions are as it relates to the business community. As we organized our debate, we made sure that we put a survey out there asking our business leaders what they wanted to hear. What kinds of questions would you ask if you were on stage with them? And we were really grateful to have leaders of our Chairman's Circle investors on stage posing these questions to the candidates. And so we want to continue to apply that type of model. Not that we wouldn't get involved at some point in the future utilizing our PAC, but I think we'll be really highly selective in the ways that we do that. Right now we've pressed pause, and our focus is on making sure that our business community understands where these candidates are coming from.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about the mayor's race, but there are also 13 council seats that are on the ballot too. Right. How critical are those positions in particular to what you do?
Yeah, they're all critical. These are governing bodies that at the end of the day, they make decisions that impact the way we conduct business here, the way we live. And so we want to make sure that we're a good partner, especially with new members that come in. We want to educate them on the importance of economic development. We want to walk them through the intricacies that it takes to go from a project entering our pipeline to making that announcement on stage or cutting that ribbon. There's a lot of effort and a lot of things that have to occur. So every one of those seats is critical to us. We want to make sure that we're a good partner to them, providing them data on the importance of a thriving economy. And we want to make sure that they understand we're a chamber for all businesses, and we're a chamber that focuses on all of our neighborhoods, because you can't have economic development without thriving neighborhoods that support it.
And we should point out that there will be at least 5 new council members elected with the October ballot by virtue of 5 incumbents who are not seeking re-election for them because of term limits. The other, Cheyenne Johnson, because she chose not to run for another term. Right. In your survey of chamber members, business leaders for the forum, of course, their crime was an issue, but it wasn't the only issue.
No. And in fact, a lot of the feedback that I got after the debate was our investors, our business leaders, thanking us for asking different questions and provoking different responses from the candidates that are more relatable to a business owner here in the community. And we were really thrilled with how that came about. I'm very proud of our team and the structure that they presented. And I felt we were able to learn a little bit more about how these candidates would would really position City Hall to be a partner to the business community. I really wanted to set them in that scenario of it's the 11th hour, we have our final pitch. What are you going to say to convince that CEO or CFO that Memphis is the place for your operation?
In that regard, it is having a number of different approaches to this, which you did see in response to that specifically.
Yeah.
Is that what does that say about the state of our politics, do you think?
Well, I think what was interesting is that you heard about what their visions would be for infrastructure, certainly for public safety, because that is a priority for the business community right now. And I feel that the candidates understood that they will have partnership with the business community. We want to see success. We want someone entering City Hall that will make great decisions for our community because so much is at stake. And I know from our pipeline of opportunities right now, we're going to bring a lot of great potential to whoever wins the race. And that's something interesting to me is that any of these candidates, they don't have to come in day one and figure out how are we going to create jobs in our economy? How am I going to attract jobs? You've got to partner with the Greater Memphis Chamber that's focused solely on that every day. We're going to bring those jobs. We're doing that now. And so that allows them the ability to focus on other priorities that are important to our community. And the livability of that is something that I think is unique to our politics.
On the question of public safety, you talk about the scenarios of getting down to the last parts of talking to a CEO, CFO, the team that's thinking about making $100 million, $1 billion investment.
Sure.
How often does crime and public safety come up?
So I can put it this way: we've never lost a project due to crime alone. We certainly shoulder into that. We never shy away from that conversation. And what I like to be able to tell that CEO, and certainly what we would love to hear from a mayor who's sitting in that room with us, is a commitment to outcomes. And the role the chamber is playing right now is one of pressure and support. We're finding that fulcrum in between and holding officials that are responsible for public safety accountable to the strategies and initiatives that they want to implement. We want near-term outcomes. We know we didn't get into this situation overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. But we need to be intensive and intentional. And the business community leaders are leading from the front. They are at the table. They are voicing their concerns. But they're also asking, how can we help? And I think that's different than anything I've witnessed before. And our Chairman Circle Investors formed a public safety accountability committee. And we've had numerous convenings, and we'll continue to have these convenings with the DA, with the sheriff, with the MPD, police chief, and many others, in order to understand the barriers that they're facing, understand the challenges, even the lack of funding in some cases, but taking inventory of what is necessary to ensure public safety, all the while understanding that economic mobility, in my opinion, is probably a great equalizer and the most powerful tool to combat crime in our community. We have to focus on poverty. We have to focus on creating opportunities for people to attain the skills of an innovation economy that we're seeing coming our way.
Do we have the workforce we need from the Ford plant, all the suppliers that are and kind of feeding into that or kind of radiating out from that, from the ongoing growth and distribution? You all have had this big focus on advanced manufacturing.
Yeah.
But people will say, well, we don't have the workforce for that. We don't have the workforce for that. Is that still true?
I don't think that's true. Ford would not have come here if we didn't demonstrate the ability to produce a workforce. There are challenges, of course. We have to operate with a sense of urgency. But with respect to advanced manufacturing, that's the majority of our projects right now that we're competing for. We have over 43,000 people working in advanced manufacturing already in our region. That's a strong workforce. And we project that to continue to grow. What's beautiful about that, Eric, is that the majority of positions, in fact, we have more African Americans and females in manufacturing, advanced manufacturing positions than anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we are equipping more and more people with the relevant skills, because when we do that, it's going to be a diverse workforce, which is really our superpower.
And staying away from the ESG, those kinds of policies are under fire from some. Stay away from the politics. It is a stated, sort of pillar for a lot of big corporations.
Yeah.
It's a goal for them.
Absolutely.
Separate again from the politics of that. Is that something you talk about? And do you hear companies saying that diversity of workforce resonates with them?
It does, and it is increasingly becoming part of the conversation. They also want to know about renewable energy and other things. And Memphis is in a great position to be able to have that conversation, whether it's the abundance of clean water that we have, to the low-cost energy options that we have here, to a workforce that is truly diverse. Those are compelling, and I think that is why this region is highly attractive right now to a lot of economic development activity. We've had already a really strong year. We've announced 8 projects. That equates to over 1,700 jobs and $1.2 billion in capital investment. And the average wage for those jobs that we've announced so far this year is over $71,000. That's a different economy than what we've had in the past.
And what percentage of that is related to Ford, give or take?
I would say it's a smaller percentage, honestly.
Okay.
The majority of those projects we've announced are foreign direct investment,
Which means what?
Which means companies that have their headquarters domiciled in another country, and they are investing in the U.S. Now, our pipeline is a different matter. The pipeline is heavily influenced by Ford, and one of the more recent projects that we participated in at the Chamber was Magna announcing, and they're going to be one of the suppliers on site at Blue Oval City with 2 operations. That was Project Elvis. We sourced that a couple of years ago.
Because you have these code names.
Yeah,
There's
we
always
do.
code names.
Everything is confidential. But that was Project Elvis. And
Magna makes what? Just because this is the kind of stuff.
Yeah. So they're a supplier. They have multiple products that go into the finished vehicle. Yeah.
Wait, I'll go to Bill.
All right, and you've talked before about logistics, kind of, well, not completely, but it takes care of itself to a large degree because of our reputation, because of our location on this. Are you seeing more of a balance now of other industries aside from logistics?
We are seeing that balance. In fact, it's tilting more into advanced manufacturing because we have the pre-existing infrastructure that makes us a global logistics leader. We're recognized for it.
You make it here, you can move it.
You can move it here. You're right. So the value proposition is incredibly strong when you consider, the disruptions that you've seen in the global supply chain and the federal policy now that is coming out, whether it's the Inflation Reduction Act or the CHIPS Act, where there's intentionality for bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., China +1. You hear terms like nearshoring, friendshoring. But the bottom line is we want to position Memphis for the attraction of that investment. If these companies are receiving funds from IRA or CHIPS Act and they have to produce in the U.S., where better than the Memphis region? Because when you produce it, you can get it anywhere very effectively and efficiently.
Okay. The show, when it airs on Friday, I think you will have made the announcement about the Chamber's new involvement with the Memphis in May International Festival. And of course, since its founding in the mid to late 70s, the honored country has been the most visible part of basically the mission at the founding of that festival, which was to increase international business ties.
That's right.
And the Chamber will now be directly involved in that, correct?
Yeah, correct, Bill. Again, we're thrilled to partner with Memphis in May to really focus on its core mission and ours, and that is economic development and strengthening international ties. As I mentioned earlier, those 8 projects, a majority of them are foreign direct investment opportunities. These are international companies that are looking to invest here. Our pipeline is full of those opportunities as well. So we are truly internationalizing economic development for our region. And this gives us the opportunity to honor the legacy of a Memphis in May that in its first year selected Japan And then you see investment come along with Sharp and Brother and many others. We want to continue to replicate that and be true to the model and simply focus on economic development and diplomatic relationships.
And it's not as simple as the festival just saying to a foreign embassy, hey, we want to honor you. There's a lot of diplomacy that is involved in getting a foreign country involved here, and this is also pretty up close work with the State Department as well, right?
Absolutely. We cannot do that without this. And just this year alone, we've visited with numerous consulates in the U.S. We actually had the UK do a pop-up consulate here in Memphis. They brought their entire team from Atlanta and spent a week here providing services, getting to know our market. We host delegations from international countries all the time, not just related to Memphis in May, but we see that as a great opportunity. We focus on our relationships with embassies. I've made trips already this year overseas, and in fact we have another trip to Japan this fall. In partnership with the state of Tennessee. It's called SUSE Japan, but it's focused on the southeast U.S. states and their long-standing partnership with Japan. So those are elements of what we would like to continue, but we absolutely have to have a strong partnership with U.S. Commerce. And in fact, they have a commercial service office embedded at the Greater Memphis Chamber.
In the past, Memphis in May featured among its activities a business conference that was focused on the honored country.
Right.
Australia was a great case. They had just launched the ad campaign with Paul Hogan, who was actually making a movie at that time and didn't get to come here, but they showed the ad here.
Right.
Is that going to come back as a result of this?
So we're finalizing all of the details, but our North Star is that economic development piece of this, which is what we do each and every day. We want to focus on not just the attraction of foreign direct investment, business attraction, but also trade and exports, making sure that Memphis businesses, if they want to enter into relationships within that country, that we provide that conduit so that they learn more. And that's really at our core what we're going to focus on with this effort.
Just a couple of minutes left. We've talked some about power and infrastructure. I'll take them separately. MLGW, I mean, it's been a very difficult year in terms of weather-related events and power outages.
Yeah.
You know, we tend to focus, the media tends to focus on the number of households that are out and that shrinking number, we hope, over time. But there are businesses as well, whether that's a restaurant who has to a couple $1,000s worth of food because their power was out for a few days, or big facilities that maybe are running on generators but still not how they want to operate.
Right.
What do you want to see from MLGW, from Doug McGowan, 9 months in the job,
Right.
8 months in the job, something like that? What from a business point of view, what do you want to see MLG&W do?
So MLGW has been a great partner to the Chamber and economic development for a long time. In fact, they're also embedded in our office. Their economic development team resides there. That gives you a sense of the strong partnership and reliance that we have on one another to build our economy. It's been tough, certainly, but I commend them to their responsiveness. I know it's difficult and it doesn't make everyone happy, anyone who's been without power, and I've certainly experienced that. But I still credit Doug and his team for doing everything they can to put things in place so that they can be responsive. In fact, I was contacted by one of our businesses who's an investor in the work that we do, and they made me aware of an issue. I reached out to Doug and his leadership team, and they were right on it. And that's the kind of partnership and collaboration that we expect, and we want to continue to support that.
In terms of water, the aquifer, I mean, there's this plentiful water. There's also some risk with that, right?
Sure.
You don't want people randomly drilling into the aquifer. You don't want pollution.
Right.
How do you balance that from an economic development of encouraging people and trying to, quote, sell the water and the availability of relatively cheap, very clean water, but you also don't want to abuse that?
No, we don't want to do anything that would impair or prohibit the public from enjoying that resource in the future. And companies don't want to do that either. And they want to make sure that they're good stewards. And with ESG that we talked about before, They want to make sure that they're conserving the natural resources and being good actors in our community. So we anticipate that.
Last, infrastructure, this does come back to the mayor, the city council, but it also involves the state, federal government. In terms of the state, we're a logistics juggernaut with some pretty messed up highways right now. I mean, just driving out here from Midtown, incredible, navigating the potholes on I-40, and finally now the corridor down, what is that, Lamar, and so on is being rebuilt. I saw some of that recently.
Yeah.
What do you do from a chamber point of view to encourage more investment in just roads and roads?
Yeah, so we were proud to be a part of promoting the Transportation Modernization Act in this last General Assembly. We weighed the merit of what this legislation would do, the enabling language, and yes, the funding that could come along with it, but appreciating the state for looking at different financing models to get projects not only completed faster, but to shorten the length of time that it takes for them to get in the queue. And certainly, we are dependent on strong infrastructure, great roads. We know that Interstate 40 is the third busiest trucking corridor in the nation, and that takes a beating. So we'll continue to partner with the state, make them aware of the needs that we have. And Lamar Avenue is a great example of how our chamber and the leadership of our transportation committee has worked to advance that.
All right. That is all the time we have this week. If you missed any of the show, go to WKNO.org. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.